Technology is the most powerful change in the world of education.
Everything changes.
Welcome to the Emerging Technologies in Education podcast, delivered to you by Clever Books Company. Dear listeners, thank you for joining Emerging Technologies in Education podcast series. And we have Bonnie today as the guest. Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you.
It's great that we have Bonnie, and I'm really honored that she joined the podcast. And I'm going to give her a word to introduce herself and tell where she's coming from and what she does.
Well, I'm Bonnie Cazer. I'm in upstate New York. I know when people think of New York State, they think of New York City, but I'm in a very rural school district. So my school district has just over 1,000 students in it, and we have a high Mennonite population. Mennonites are very much like the Amish community. None of those students attend my school, but it's really important for your listeners to know that we are a very, very rural district. And I'm the principal of one of the elementary schools, which is preschool through second grade with 322 students. I'm also an adjunct professor teaching a hybrid course for one of the local universities for educational administration. And the hybrid course is time in class with students, but also modules that I facilitate right through the computer. So I'm in technology in two different worlds.
Amazing introduction. Thank you so much, Bonnie. So then I would say that you are the one who would like to lead the technology in education and is actually empowering the education process with technology. So you're positive about that. Is that correct?
I am very positive about it, yes. Even back when I was a classroom teacher, I've been a principal for 4 years, but as a classroom teacher, I was already exploring different opportunities for students to have a blended or a personalized experience using technology as a support to enhance my lessons.
This is amazing. And by the way, I've heard that you pop up again the topic of personalized learning. And I was talking to a couple of people just several days ago. And it was also the topic of personalized learning popping up, and in conjunction with the technology. They did think that technology is actually empowering the personalized learning. What do you think on that?
I do believe it is. Even for myself, part of the reason I think you and I are connected is I was going to visit a family that was my hour and a half away, and I'm very active on Twitter. And I did my own professional development just through Twitter by looking at virtual reality and augmented reality. And I was connecting with people outside of the education industry and ended up reading multiple blogs, then following people and also just learning more about that. So I think for our students, especially in a rural district like the one I'm in, those students are not going to have the opportunities they might have in a bigger district that has a lot more funding. So it gives them an opportunity to reach out, not just locally, but internationally and nationally, to learn about different topics that we just don't have coursework to fund for the students. So it's going to be a very important piece. And I believe it levels the playing field nationally and internationally.
Sounds really cool. I like that you touched already the topic of emerging technologies like augmented and virtual reality. And if we go a little bit deep on that, like I want to hear your personal opinion as maybe as a teacher or as a principal on which technologies, maybe augmented reality, virtual reality, 3D printing, or maybe digital libraries, open learning courses. What is the most beneficial currently among the technology trends, let us say, for the education, and why you think so?
That's a really good question. There's so many different things out there, and I'm not an expert on any, but I've dabbled in all. So one of the pieces is digital libraries is going to be an important piece for students and for educators and upcoming educators. There's so much information out there. We just can't sift through enough of it and all of it. But looking at students in especially the elementary grades and looking at the funding that I look at my building and the funding I have available, and I have to make decisions as to where we're going to spend that money. If I'm spending that money on digital libraries, I feel like I'm opening a whole world to students, not just limited to those hand-on paper text. Now, I love paper text, and I think every student needs to have those opportunities, but some of the subject areas that they can delve into by using digital libraries is going to be a very important piece. And it's something that they can do independently. So while a teacher is working with children at a small reading group, for example, the other children that are not with the teacher could be reading independently on topics of their own choice. And we know research shows that if children are reading on topics of their own choice, they're going to be more engaged, their reading levels increase, and they just do better in school in general. So I think when you say digital libraries, that's a really important piece. 3D printing, we have a maker space currently in the building I'm in, and you have to remember that's kindergarten through second grade. So those children are doing hands-on learning. 3D printers fit very perfectly in that makerspace area, and it gives children those skills from a very young age to work up into industry. Not all children are going to be going to college, and I don't believe that every children has to go to college. So introducing them to that idea of 3D printers and how to work with those to work in industry, but also for children that are going to go to college, looking at those opportunities so they understand the engineering pieces and the science and the technology. So, and going back to virtual reality and augmented reality, I think about our second graders who are currently learning about the War of 1812, how if they had an opportunity to put on augmented reality or virtual reality goggles, that they could be exploring the White House in 1812 before it was burned down, and they're learning about Dolly Madison and James Madison, and could they see what it looked like? It's one thing to see a 2D image of somebody's rendering of it, an artist's rendering, but it's another piece for them to be able to explore and to dig deeper and have those deep conversations about what that was really like.
Wow, that's impressive. How much you do at your school. And in order to keep yourself up to date on all those technology coming up and how to implement it, do you like follow some specific resources that you could recommend to listeners?
I do. Eric Sheninger is a really big resource that I follow. George Couros, who wrote Innovator's Mindset. Not that they're delving specifically into specific technologies, but I follow them on Twitter, and then they follow other people that are doing those pieces. We have a fabulous superintendent of schools here who has been leading us in a blended model for our school district. This is our second year, so we have about 30 teachers participating. So we have our director of curriculum and development. She also is doing those pieces. So they're providing professional development, not just to the teachers that are participating in these opportunities, but also with the administrative staff. So one of the things that we're using is our school district follows Eureka Math, which is part of the Engage New York math modules, and Zearn, Z-E-A-R-N, that's a math program that was written to go with our Eureka Math, and that's something that we utilize here at our building. And so I'll send the links later on regarding those, but those are big pieces for us. As far as the virtual reality and augmented reality, again, those are things I've just learned about on Twitter myself, and I don't have those resources of who I specifically follow, but I could put those on there. So those are the big names here in the states that I follow, and those are how I learn, and also how we've been providing professional development to our teachers and also to the administrative staff.
That's grand. Thanks, Samuel. And may I ask you a little bit tricky question?
Sure.
So we currently are in the stage of this fourth industrial revolution, and we know that like decade ago we didn't have the jobs that exist right now, like iOS developer or Android developer or user interface designer or digital marketer, things like this. And we're pretty much not sure which jobs are going to come up in the next decade. So what going to do the kids that are currently like starting school or in the middle of the process? Do you somehow address this in developing some soft skills among the kids at school? And how do you work around this program so they're kind of ready for the uncertain future?
That's a very good question, and I think that is the big question that many educators are looking at in those soft skills pieces. So looking at those 21st century skills of collaboration, creativity, communication skills, those are really the important pieces. I'm a facilitator for the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Franklin Covey's work. And we've brought that to the school district here. And he really works on how to communicate and collaborate. Those are the two big pieces we look at when we're looking at those 7 habits. And so we work even at the youngest grades with practicing with children, modeling, role playing with them, of looking at each other and talking and problem solving. Rather than trying to solve the problem for them, we go deeper. Also, the staff members are wonderful about looking at higher level questioning, which really engages the children in that cognition of, not just looking at a problem on the surface level, but asking those questions, why and what. And the teachers are asking why and what, and don't always have the answers for the students, but it really gets the students used to asking the questions, answering the questions, and talking to each other. But also those important pieces of high vocabulary. So we focus a great deal on vocabulary for the students also, so they have that. We're not doing coding right now, but the makerspace movement I think that we currently have in our building and that's happening in the area is a big piece of supporting that also. So when children can have hands-on experiences of building things, taking things apart, they're making those connections. And when we're looking at them working on coding or working in other industries, we're hoping that they have an understanding of how things are put together, how to build things, and how to problem solve. Even if they're making an imaginary product out of their makerspace, that at least they have to start with the vision and work towards that vision and work through failing forward. If something isn't working, how do they problem solve themselves? How do they get support from their peers? Our makerspace teacher is wonderful about saying, go see Johnny because he's an expert on using the X-Acto knife or whatever that skill might be. So the children aren't always looking just to the classroom teacher, but they're also looking to other people. And that's going to be an important piece in the workforce too, when they're working on teams, to be able to recognize that if I don't have that skill, I can ask somebody else, or I can learn that skill. Where do I go to learn that skill and to get better at that?
This is impressive how challenging the job of educator nowadays is. It's getting more and more challenging with the technology. And I think one of the important skills that you mentioned is that being able to find the information on where to get the skill. I think it's one of the important ones, because you can't know everything, but unless you are able to find what you're looking for, it's already a great asset to have in the future.
I agree.
And last question to you. So me and you were absolutely pro technology in education. However, sometimes we meet people that say that technology is not for education and the classroom should be the traditional way. What do you normally tell those people, and do you try to persuade them and take your point, or how do you encourage them in trying out technology?
That's a great question also. So one of the biggest pieces is principle is that I model using technology. I have a newsletter that I send out to the staff about every other week, and in there I usually highlight some form of technology, or part of my message they have to use a new technology. So I use a program called S'more to write my newsletters, but I might be sending them to a Padlet, or I might be having them, the new thing I want to try is ThingLink. And so I try to embed those pieces, and I force those teachers to have to use some of those different programs, and that way they have to use it. They have to work through those problems of logging on and being able to utilize the information I'm sending them, and 99% of the time they realize it's not as difficult as they thought it was. In fact, many of them come back and say, oh, that was really cool, that was engaging, how can I use that for my students? And so modeling is the number one piece. And the other piece is sometimes I just have to tell somebody, use it, try it, or One of the other pieces that's worked for me before is, boy, I saw this piece of this program. I'm really interested in it. I'm not sure how it's going to work with our age level because we work with such young children. Would you give it a try? I know that you're not a fan of technology, and if you try it and find that it's easy, then I know that more people are going to use it and find value in it. So there's different ways you can approach it. Part of the reason I think some teachers reject it or don't use it is the amount of time it takes to learn a new program and being able to know what the connection is and how it's going to benefit students. Educators are phenomenal, and when it comes down to it, it always comes down to, in their mind, what's best for students and for student learning. And if they see that what they've been doing for that past 20 to 30 years works, it's hard for them to see that technology might be another way to engage and enhance. And that's how I look at it. How do we engage and enhance? Technology is a tool, but we know that we're looking at students that are very accustomed to using different formats, and we need to stay abreast with that. So another piece is professional development. It goes with that time piece. How do we train our staff members to be able to use technologies? Even as the program that I'm teaching, this hybrid course from a local university for future educators or administrators, how do I model to them some of these technologies? Because they're going to be having younger staff members. Those staff members that are going to be coming in the next 10 or 15 years are very accustomed to Facebook, Twitter, using technology. So we have to make sure that our upcoming administrators are modeling, but also just staying up on it because that's who their staff members are. So I think we're going to see a shift in the next 10 to 15 years as some of the older teachers are retiring, and we're looking at hiring some of the millennials and younger teachers that are going to be challenging us as administration and school districts to be using that technology on a regular basis.
Wow, that's impressive. And I think you are a great example on how really it comes down from the management of the school interested in engaging with technology for education. I think this is absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I think that there's a good, great future for the school and great CPD development for the teachers as well. I would like to thank you, Bonnie, for this great conversation and this fantastic information that you've given. And I wish you to have a great week.
Oh, you too. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon.
Everything changes.